Happy New Year,
Happy
everyone.
New Year.
Yeah.
Back.
We're back.
2025.
2025. Let's go. Let's do
Yeah.
it. Hope everyone had a nice holiday. Merry Christmas and a happy New Year.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're kind of talking as we're entering. Nice socks, by the way. Is that Mona Lisa or what's going on
Yeah,
there?
these are artistic art socks, I guess.
Art
with,
socks.
Mona
It's
Lisa.
funny. It's like scrunched up, but
yeah,
still
so visible.
Yeah.
I think I had like some Starry Night ones too. There was yeah.
Yeah. Well, was it a Merry Christmas?
Yes and no. I mean, it's ups and downs, I would say. Kind of crunched for time with a lot of things, so
You basically had just like a week off, right?
just 1 week off. Yeah.
I think I had probably even less off, I think. But
Just
anyway.
what, like 3-4 days or something?
Well, it was this whole week basically. And that was it. But you had a few days ahead of that. Anyway, all that's besides the point.
I was just in Australia and Japan's work life culture. I mean, the amount of holidays that people get in other countries is kind of insane compared to
What's
Japan.
standard in Australia?
The other thing is you can get long service leave,
Which is basically unpaid.
No, it's paid.
No,
right?
it's paid.
So, if you're working at some job for enough years, like you can take like 6 months paid off or something and just like travel the world or, do whatever.
And that's who pays for that? The government?
I think so. Yeah. Or, there's a lot more benefits like that. So,
Japan has some of those programs, but I think the issue here is it's like the stuff that's technically legally required is not granted by the managerial class, like paternity leave or even maternity leave.
I think they're pretty good about granting maternity from what I've seen, but
I've heard that they try and get the woman to quit. Basically, they're like, so you're quitting the company, right? And they're like, no, I'm taking maternity leave. I'll be back in like a year. And like, so you're quitting, right? And just kind of that dialogue continuing.
Yeah, I've definitely seen people get maternity leave here. So
I think it just really depends on the company.
Maybe it depends on the company. Yeah. But paternity, I've never seen paternity leave here. It's kind of hard to imagine anyone actually going through with, but I guess in theory they have some of these social programs. But
how were the New Year's vibes in Perth?
I didn't even go into the city. I mean, they always have a big fireworks.
But like even on the subsequent day, I guess.
Fireworks display. It's pretty.
Were
everything's just closed. Yeah, it's pretty. Most businesses are closed for until at least the 3rd or 4th, and
so like here basically
sort of the whole week. Yeah, not too different from here. So probably, I mean, it's only the 5th now, so probably things are still. I would expect like the first full week. I mean, a lot of businesses
in Australia.
Yeah. They do kind of. Everyone just takes a holiday.
Yeah.
Even just December, January, like a lot of places are just fully closed or like so people are definitely.
Well, for them, it's like summer break.
Yeah,
right?
summer break.
Yeah,
it's super hot. So
such a weird concept to like celebrate Christmas on the beach.
Yeah, it's
like
a bit of a
summer.
It's a bit of a head flip, right?
Yeah,
but it's certainly really nice weather, and can imagine people not wanting to be at their jobs or be at work.
Yeah, like here it felt on the 1st, it felt like there's kind of that New Year spirit with everyone feeling refreshed and full of energy for their resolutions and whatnot.
I just feel like Tokyo New Year is very gloomy and like kind of downbeat. I mean, it's just more like
it's just very quiet.
It's quiet. I mean, people are mostly just with their families or like cleaning their house or like doing the Hatsumode, like the shrine visit. Yeah. I mean, it's nothing really. I mean, there are like club events and nightlife events and stuff, but just in public, I mean, it's usually pretty downbeat. Kind of vibes.
Yeah, like I was trying to find lunch on the 1st here, and like everything's closed basically.
It's probably just all closed, right? Yeah.
It was just that like Tobu spice area in in the station that was open that had like the 5 or 6 restaurants. But yeah, like everything else was pretty much closed, which kind of annoying. But yeah, I felt like today I was out for lunch and it very much felt that January grind kind of
starting to come back in. Yeah.
Where everyone's just like, back into this again.
Yeah. January and February are always kind of the worst months here, I would say, and possibly except in Australia, they're pretty nice. But certainly Northern Hemisphere, I'd probably say January, February are most people's least favorite months.
Like in some ways, if it's not gray and gloomy, I find winter quite pleasant in Tokyo. Like certainly December, I feel like December historically is very nice in Tokyo, where you get the dry, clear skies, sunny. Daytime temperatures are 10 degrees Celsius. Like it's pretty nice overall. But
I don't mind it. Yeah. I think part of it for me is just looking forward to having holidays too, though. Yeah. So I don't know if I would be super enthused about it otherwise, but certainly not as bad as January, February in terms of weather.
Yeah.
Or even March. I mean, March realistically here is pretty chilly and bleak until kind of the last week or so. It's usually not super pleasant either.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely February is probably the gloomiest, I think, here.
Yeah.
So I don't know. In any case, have you kept up with US events at all?
No.
I was kind of laughing to myself.
There's more. There's more shootings or something? There's more.
I don't know about shooting. I mean,
I think there was some other shooting or some other attack or something.
The Cybertruck Trump bombing, or what was it? Yeah, explosion. Cybertruck Trump Tower explosion, which is such a hilarious sentence. Yeah. You didn't hear about this at all?
No. All I heard was some. I heard there was like some shooting or something, public shooting or.
There was also the New Orleans
that's what I heard
attack. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of laughing.
See if I can log this.
Like I didn't even get the chance to ask you this, but like it's kind of a funny, I don't know, kind of dark, bet or question.
Yeah.
But New Year rolls around. Okay, what's going to be the first tragedy that?
What's the first tragedy?
Right?
Wasn't there was some plane crash last year?
Well, there's a lot.
Yeah, there's some.
That was in Korea, but there was
something. There was something at Tokyo Airport, I think, too.
Tokyo Airport,
like Narita. There was like some crash or something last year.
Yeah, with the fire evacuation.
Yeah.
Planes had a really rough week leading up to New Year.
Okay, yeah, here we go. At least 15 killed in New Orleans truck attack.
Yeah, it was like
the
guy's like an ISIS convert, allegedly,
Islamic
right?
State, or
so it's really weird. He was, I guess he's African American, and he served in Afghanistan. He's like a ex-military guy, and then was radicalized allegedly at some point and became ISIS. And yeah, I mean, all this stuff is really annoying to delve into because it's like, what's a psyop? What's like legit? Like, what? Yeah.
Well, it's not uncommon for people who serve in the armed forces to become radicalized for various reasons.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, like you serve in the army or serve in the military, do terrible things, see terrible things, come back, and there's no like mental health supports. You're just kind of thrust back into the world.
Yeah.
And like,
so following, I can't remember this dude's name, but there was one, I did a bit of a deep dive with, I think it was the last person to win the Medal of Honor in the U.S., which is like the highest bravery award.
Yeah.
And I think he'd pulled off some rescue mission in Afghanistan or something. And again, on paper, it looked like it was very low odds of success, but he I can't remember the specifics,
What
but it
year
was.
is this?
I think it's going back a couple, 15 years maybe or something.
Okay.
But he pulled off this very daring. I think it was a rescuer raid or something. So he wins the Medal of Honor, which again is like the highest, military honor you can get, right? And it gives you like crazy lifelong benefits. Like apparently you get like free airfare on U.S. Airlines like for the rest of your life,
right?
You get some crazy pension or other like privileges that normally would only be for like ex-presidents or something.
Free breadsticks, top up.
I guess Olive Garden. Yeah. Olive Garden just has to spread its
extra cheese topping,
spread its cheese buffet for the rest of its life, right? So you get all these insane privileges, and it's obviously considered like the highest military honor. But it was just examining this dude's life afterwards, and it was just like a shit show, right? So he was like, I'm trying to remember. I think he married one of that Alaska politician's daughters or something.
What's her name?
Can't remember her name, but
there's a P.
Palin or something.
Palin,
I think it was
Sarah Palin.
It might have been one of them. It was just tracking his life, and it was just like, it just seemed like it was really, like his wife was like disrespecting him, and it was like, oh, this dude's a loser. Like, did he really win this medal? Like, he doesn't know. He just doesn't know how to take care of himself, and he's just like a loser, and blah blah. Blah. And I don't know. It just seemed things like things were like spiraling, or he was having a lot of problems. I mean, maybe now he's perfectly fine, but hopefully he is. But it's just kind of that thing where like this dude's like good at one specific thing,
being a killing machine, or
functioning in certain situations,
right.
But it doesn't mean that like I think that was kind of the takeaway for me, was just like, this dude's maybe capable of doing certain extreme things that most people couldn't.
Right.
But other than that, he might be, either average or below average in like lots of things.
Yeah.
Like even if you just put him in a normal, I don't know, low maintenance job, he might just really suck or something. Or he might, interpersonally, he might just, which kind of seemed like the case. Like he just kind of sucked, or it was certainly not like some outstanding, I don't know, figure or something.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, and I think I did, if I remember right, I did watch a podcast or something with him, where he was just kind of trying to come to terms with that, because it's like
good at one specific thing.
Yeah. But it's almost like he got that when he was like 23 or something. So you hit this insane peak,
right?
But it's like, oh, you're still alive, and like in lots of other respects, you're maybe not that good, or like not as talented as
right.
Which I think is, I think there's like I don't know, lesson, or at least some insights that can apply with a lot of things, where it's like, someone that maybe people might be good at some things, but like surprisingly bad at others, or like even not even exceptional, or
like, you still have to live the rest of your life, basically, right?
Yeah, you still got,
you still have to pay taxes or whatever, or
I mean, it's always going to be there. Like you're always going to have that,
manage relationships.
So there's a lot of things where like you're always going to have that medal,
right?
But like like it's kind of like, where do you go from there,
right?
Because
you can only hang your hat on that for so long.
Well, yeah, right? And past a certain point, it's like, what, the skills to like, kill an Afghan with your bare hands. Like, how often is that really gonna
come up?
Like, I guess you could
non-Afghan life,
or any situation. I mean, I guess you could career military it.
Yeah,
you could be a career military serviceman for the rest of your life, I guess. But it's still sort of, I definitely came away from it with the sense that there was kind of like a tragic dimension where like, oh, what, I guess is a victory in a way, but it's almost like that outsized honor kind of like pointed out. And like, if I remember right, even he said something like he didn't feel like he deserved the Medal of Honor. Like, you know, he did something that was like he didn't think it was as exceptional as maybe some people did.
Well, it's like I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I think like one of the things that often comes up is like, I just did what anyone would have done in that position.
Yeah, so I think
so it's like I didn't actually do it. I just was the one who was there.
I think that's his take, is that like he, you know, he'd seen other servicemen do seemingly equivalent things, and they weren't like rewarded or anything, or like, so I think there's that sense where he's kind of wrestling with that too. I definitely came away from it thinking, wow, like, my life seems better than this dude, and he's just like won the high, you know, right? So,
well, like what comes to mind is one of these things where it's like how they say that biology basically hasn't designed us to grow old.
Yeah,
like we're basically designed to function well up until our mid-20s, and then evolution kind of doesn't really care what goes on from there. And we've actually kind of selected for that technically.
Yeah.
Kind of a similar thought crosses my mind with like military, where it's like, all the appeal is front loaded.
Well, athletes too, right? I mean, there's a sense with athletes as well. I mean, you know, there's
like you wear out your whole body by the time you're 30, and then, you know, maybe you compete in the Olympics, which apparently pays terribly as well. Basically, you don't really make much money off it unless you're Phelps or whatever, or like a few handful athletes that manage to turn it into something. But otherwise, you know, you win second place globally, but then that like doesn't turn into much else afterwards. Like maybe you get a Nike commercial spot or something.
Yeah, so, and I guess there's some exceptional athletes that can stay active into their, you know, 30s and even 40s, but there's certainly like extreme outliers, and they probably do have to kind of pay a price for that too, where they're just having to, you know, put their all into that, to maybe the exclusion of much else, right? Or so it's just one example of interesting takes on things. Like you would think that or you just wonder who's actually kind of coming away from it better,
right,
or not, you know.
Well, do you know many people from, I don't know, high school or whatever that went into the military?
Almost everyone, yeah. I would
almost
say,
everyone went to the military?
Not almost everyone, but I would say a significant.
You know a lot who
a
went?
lot, yeah.
This is from Pennsylvania?
Yeah, a lot. I would say no, I was exaggerating with almost everyone, but
a lot.
I would say a significant proportion of my friends from early years went into it.
Yeah, for me it was quite different. I think I know like 2 people from high school who went into the military. So I know my read on it was that people who are kind of drawn to that are drawn to, I don't know, someone basically creating meaning for you, I guess, where you like kind of submit to the hierarchy, or like you.
Yeah, well, there are
you lose that existential angst because someone kind of basically.
I think there are, you know, obvious benefits in the sense of like the GI Bill and you know, pension benefits and other. You know,
it's like if you come back, you can go to college for free.
Yeah.
Is that actually, does that pan out?
GI Bill, yeah. Okay. There's a lot of things you can study that. Well, plus they do give you the equivalent. You know, the U.S. military does give you the equivalent of job training. You know, and practical skills. So you're gonna walk out of there. You're gonna walk out of there with some practical skills. Right. You could market no matter what.
Well, that's good.
I always like, it's such a weird thing. Like I always feel like anytime I talk about this, like I always feel like I'm like turning into a commercial for the U.S. Army. Because I'm always like,
only you can.
Yeah, like I always feel like I'm like, well, it does have lots of material benefits providing you come back safely. You again, GI Bill, pension, job skills. It's obviously going to be on your resume as well.
Yeah, it's great on paper.
It's great on paper.
Assuming you can get a good night's sleep once you come back, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully
so I always feel like my objection is that, like what, I mean, are you going to put in for sign on to investigate Iraq's weapons of mass destruction,
right?
Which obviously didn't exist, or any of these things. Well, like to what extent do you want to gamble for Bush Cheney or any of these conflicts, which in most cases I wouldn't think are either unjustifiable or not. I don't know. Yeah. So
how old were you in 2001? Roughly, you're in high school?
15 or something.
Okay. Yeah.
14, 15.
Yeah, I mean, so your generation would have, your class, I guess, your, peers would have been kind of prime strike zone for being shipped off to Iraq, basically.
Yeah.
Did a lot do that?
Yeah, there's a lot of high school, junior high school friends I had that served there.
Yeah.
Most of them came out, fine.
Yeah.
Some didn't. So
didn't come out or didn't come out fine.
Well, didn't come out with all of their limbs intact and other things, right? So
that's rough.
So there's that element of it. If I could go back, would I do it? Probably not, because again, right. I just think the any support of what the Bush Cheney regime was doing, that I probably wouldn't really.
Yeah.
Still can't get behind in any sense. So
I mean, it certainly did not stand up to time.
Well, more than Vietnam did. Or, I mean, I guess that's the other obvious, outlying.
Right.
We were talking about Patton earlier, but like, it's kind of unusual to hear anyone say they had a good time in the Vietnam War, or would do it. Fun time, would do again.
Right.
Not something you'd hear too often.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, okay, Vietnam didn't hold up, Iraq didn't hold up. I'm trying to think. Well, what does that leave? Like, what, World War II?
But
like if you lived through the beaches of Normandy or whatever, lived through D-Day, then your legacy is enshrined. But yeah, even
the Korean War is a bit sketchy in some ways.
Man, I was looking up the firebombings of Tokyo. Have you read much on that?
Yeah, I'm
that's
really
just pure horror.
Yeah. Well, that's the classic thing is that the conventional firebombing of Tokyo is worse than
it was like hell on earth.
Yeah,
right.
Well, it killed more people than any atomic bombings. Which
it sounded like it was the biggest, basically, loss of life in war, in the shortest period of time.
Yeah.
Right. Like
there's a lot of those things which no one really like the Dresden firebombing too was also unnecessary if I remember right. But the Tokyo thing, they're just completely it
like created a firestorm, right? So like it created its own weather system just due to Tokyo being on fire. Yeah, like I mean, it was like, to have lived through that would have been, they were like fishing bodies out of rivers for like weeks after.
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting because central Tokyo was like now what we would call Chiba, I guess, or like Kotoku. Like that's where the center was, and now that's kind of adjacent for us, I guess. But yeah, like just completely razed central Tokyo, right? Anyway, yeah.
Well, it's another thing where I never hear anyone really say much about it. And if I remember right, Curtis LeMay, who was the general who masterminded that, and I think he did say basically like if we hadn't won the war, then
that'd be a war crime.
We obviously would have been, charged with, like the equivalent of like Nazi tier war crimes for
Nuremberg.
Yeah. So I mean, if they hadn't won, then I mean, they're pretty pretty obvious, total war equivalent of those war crimes.
Yeah.
So. But no one really cares. I mean, everyone's fixated on the, Hiroshima or whatever, right. Which, sure was destructive, but certainly not as much as that Tokyo conventional firebombing.
Well, so like I was looking at the map of it. I'll pull it up here because it's kind of interesting to look at. But basically, like, where we are was completely razed. Shinjuku was completely razed. Basically, like Shibuya as well. Fire bombing Tokyo map. Like I was reading about how the operation was conducted, and basically, like there's the first wave of fire bombers, and they basically they drew an X on Tokyo in fire. And then, like, the second wave basically was just like, just lob it anywhere in that general vicinity. Just aim for the huge flaming X, right? And I believe this was a daytime raid, which kind of... Wait, was it daytime? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Trying to find it here. Yeah, I mean, like this, basically.
Yeah.
So, like, they're targeting... this area, right?
Yeah, it looks like all of Kanto pretty much is getting cooked there. Being totally cooked.
But yeah, I mean, it weirdly. So that's kind of another funny feature of living in Japan. Japanese people like don't know about World War II, right?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a repression. Repression response at work there, where it's too. I think it's kind of too enormous to really think about.
Yeah.
So it's almost like we'll just blanket then and move on because there's not much they can really seriously think about, I guess, or they wouldn't really maybe get much done, right?
Yeah.
So I think they just had to kind of blank on that and get back to work and. Carry on as if not much has happened, right?
Yeah, I mean, it made me more sympathetic, I guess, towards, because you just kind of realize that you're living among people who have, I don't know, ancestral trauma or something, right? Where, like, they're not even aware that, the places that they're casually shopping at were smoldering piles of ash, like
piles of corpses
70 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like everywhere, right? Like all the classic Tokyo hotspots, like that was all just gone, right?
Yeah.
And they like specifically avoided bombing the Imperial Palace.
Well, that's why they spared Kyoto for that reason too, because I think it was like I don't know, Eisenhower's someone in the U.S. cabinet had had their honeymoon there.
Yeah, it was like too beautiful.
So I don't really want to destroy this, but.
Yeah. Well, the reason, like the whole attack, the whole reason for the firebombing was basically to get the emperor to surrender, right? So like they're basically like trying to make the emperor feel guilty, I guess, just here is unmitigated destruction of people you claim to represent, right?
Yeah. They were in a rough position because they weren't even right up until the end. I mean, they weren't really. Most of the people around the emperor, they weren't even considering that as an option. So they sort of were willing to just like almost go extinct to just continue and not surrender. So even after the atomic bombings, I think there's a strong faction that just wanted to continue.
Yeah.
Even as it was getting that hopeless. But.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what book this was from, but this was one of the cases I think you were even telling me about this, of one of the like Pacific Island theaters where Japan was fighting, and you know, some like lost platoon member.
Oh yeah, Lieutenant Onoda, I think, where he was still fighting up until like 1963 or something.
Right, like what, 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Just surviving out in the jungle,
and he like didn't believe, like they had to like, you know, they had to like get his family to call him or something.
No,
and, like they're trying to like show him newspapers.
They had to send his actual commanding officer in the war out there, because that was the only person that he would take orders from.
Right.
So he's like, if it's not my actual commanding officer whose face I know, then I can't really surrender.
Yeah.
Right? So they eventually did.
But like even then he didn't believe them, because he was like, no, Japan would never surrender.
Yeah, we thought of it. Yeah, he wasn't willing to well, because they're first they dropped like leaflets from the air.
Right.
You know, like you know, the war's over, come out, you can return, you can go home and see your family. So he's like, oh, this is obviously an Allied scam, right? I'm just gonna ignore these leaflets and continue my guerrilla raids on the village, right? So that goes on for like 20 more years, right? And he's just like,
where was this? Like what?
It was somewhere in the Philippines, I think. Okay. Right? He was
so he was just terrorizing some Philippine villagers, basically.
So he would,
wild.
And so well, there's not much you could do, right? Because you know he's just used to living in the jungle. So he would just like raid, you know, neighboring farms and stuff. And he's got a pretty big supply of ammunition. So you don't really want to like challenge, like, because he'll probably just gun you down, right? And, you know, he's got good survival skills and you know, military tactics. He's got ammunition,
right?
So if, you know, if he like steals a pig or something, you're just like, oh, we'll just write it off and you know, pretend it got stolen by animals or something, right? So,
but he wasn't like going after people.
Not really, not from what I can tell. I mean, he was just like kind of holding his position and trying not to be discovered and you know, captured, and just survive. That's about it.
It's crazy. Like imagine spending 20 years like that.
Well, it reminds me of the North Shore Hermit in the U.S.
I don't know.
Have you heard about the Hermit?
No, what is
this? This is another. How are we doing for time here? Because this is a whole other rabbit hole.
We're halfway through.
Okay, so we probably got time here. Yeah. Now I'll try to. We don't have to go too deeply into the Hermit.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you have a lot to share here, so I'm curious.
It's just an amazing story. I mean, I don't know how much I can. So this is up in Maine, right? In like, I don't know, 1982 or 83.
Right. Is this like well known, first of all?
It is now.
Okay.
But it just came out like a few years ago, right? So
Maine, 1983.
Yeah, so there's this high school kid, I think his name is Christopher Knight or something. So he's coming home, you know, he's getting towards the end of high school, right? And he's like driving home from school one day, and he's like, well, I kind of don't really feel like going home, and kind of don't really feel like going back to school either. So I might just follow a whim and just keep driving my car here and see where I end up, right? So he just gets on the highway and just starts driving, and you know, he gets really pretty deep out there in the middle of nowhere, and eventually his car runs out of gas, and he's just like, all right. So he just gets out of the car and he just walks into the woods, right? And I think it's like still springtime, you know, so it's not too freezing out. Because remember, this is Maine, right? So it gets cold in the winter. So he, you know, he's just kind of drifting around in nature, right, for a long time. And you know, he starts getting hungry, and you know, he's got some money with him, so he's able to buy some food for a little bit. But eventually decides he's just not going to go back home, right? So he's like, I'm just going to stay out here in the woods and find some way to survive, right? So he starts like breaking into. He basically just becomes like a burglar, right? But he only steals food. So like if he sees like some valuables or, you know, wallet or you know, cash, he just leaves it. but he just cleans out the fridge.
Mm.
So so after a while he like starts, well, again, because he's just like canvassing the woods, right? So he's in this like super rural, basically Maine forest area that, like, again, normal people don't even really, other than like people going there for like a, you know, summer resort. It's kind of like a resort area. You know, it's just like so far away from anywhere.
Right.
Just out in the woods, right? So he finds this little, like, you know, kind of valley canopy out in the woods. And he's just like, I'm going to just build home base here. And that's what he does, right? So he builds like almost like a house for himself, but it's not even really a house. I mean, I think it was just more like a shelter home base. You know, so he's got like stolen beds. He's got like bedding. I guess he's got like some sort of roof frame. You know, he's got tents and stuff. So he just starts like stockpiling shit, right? Like food and, you know, propane stoves, you know, the little gas cartridge stove where you can like heat things and cook, right? But he's like so paranoid. He's like, he won't even start a fire. So he's like, the only way he can cook is with these like little propane gas cartridges.
Paranoid of what exactly?
Just getting discovered, right? Because he's like, oh, if they see the smoke from the fire, you're gonna know I'm there, right?
Were people like looking for him?
Not at first, right? So remember, this is early days, right? So
he was a high school student, right?
Yeah. So he's like, I don't know, 18 or 19, right?
His family's just not looking for him.
Well, they were for a while, but they just the trail went cold, right? So he's out there, right? And he just stays there, right? So he just continues his pattern where he's like, you know, during the summer months, I'm gonna, you know, he just like continues robbing nearby areas,
right?
Just break in, steal as much food and, you know, like shelter kind of stuff as you can, stockpile it in the home base, and then just keep building it up, right? And then in winter, he's like, well, my goal now is just like hibernate, basically. You know, like almost like a bear. So he's like, I just need to survive the winter,
right? Because
it's like pretty brutal, right? And again, remember, he has no heating. He doesn't want to light a fire. So he's like, how am I going to survive this, right? So basically, he would like, almost like a bear. He's like, I gotta get fat. So he just drinks as much alcohol as he can. He's just
nutritious
eating
alcohol.
Yeah. So he's eating like just pure pork and fat and, you know, snacks. He's like, I just gotta build up a layer of blubber that's gonna literally insulate me. And then all night in the winter, I'm just gonna like move around, right, to keep the blood flowing and like keep active, right?
Sounds exhausting.
Yeah, right. So he does this, right? And he does this for like 20 years. Right?
Right.
So again, at first, like people, like at first, no one's like aware of it, right? Because like at first, it's just like, oh, unrelated break-ins. Like, so what, right? There's no pattern. There's no.
Well, wouldn't the pattern be like foods missing or?
So again, this is at first, right?
Yeah.
But after like about the first 5-10 years, people are like, wait, like, is this a ghost? What's happening here, right? So like the legend starts. So this became like, apparently in this area, this became like an actual legend, and they thought that it was like Bigfoot or like a ghost or like some, I don't know, like cryptid or something, aliens or something, right? Because it just keeps fucking happening, right? Every year, this same cycle happens, right? For like 20, you know, like 1982 to like, I don't know, 2002 or 2012 or something. I forget how long he was actually there. It was something. It was probably closer to like 30 years. Actually, I'm trying to remember what.
Do you know when he was found?
I'm just gonna look it up now. But yeah. So I think it was like about Pond Hermit or something. Okay, yeah. I think it was closer to. 27 years, right?
Damn. Yeah.
So between 1986 and 2013.
Right.
So that's like almost like 30 years.
Crazy.
Right?
So what? Parents. Okay.
Well, he like
Christopher and that. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like time is passing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
does it show his base?
I'll show you later. But so time is passing, right? And after about the first 10 years, like he Yep,
I'm listening. Yeah.
So again, like about 10 years into this, he's only like 28, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by that time, he's like pretty, like he's kind of like figured it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he knows how to not get caught. He knows how to get what he needs.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to get around the woods without being seen.
Mm-hmm.
He knows which houses are going to have food. He knows how to break into them.
Right.
He knows how to, so he's figured it out, right? So according to him, he's like, this was the happiest time of my life. Cause he's like, I didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I didn't have to talk to anyone. I was just free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, especially in the summer, he's like, I would just go out in the lakes and swim around by myself and like, look at the stars and, just reading books. He's like, I was totally free. Like, I kind of just forgot who I even was.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like a nameless human who just existed, and
Mm-hmm.
there was like there's nothing else, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just totally free, right? So for like the first 20 years, it was like actually he kind of like figured out how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just, like, the only difficulty was just like physically surviving the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But he worked out the routine where he was like, again, he's like, I gotta bulk up
mm-hmm.
and just get as fat as possible,
mm-hmm.
and then just be active at night
mm-hmm.
in the winter. And I mean, he built up the base, so he was at least like sheltered from snow and stuff,
mm-hmm.
but it's still cold, right? It's still freezing cold.
Yeah.
But again, remember, he's like stealing like Moncler jackets. He's like stealing like super warm tents.
Mm-hmm.
He's like stealing high level, supplies from,
mm-hmm.
These camps and everything. Right. So he's certainly got a lot of survival gear. He was able to, liberate back to his base. Right. But again, like this is going on for like, 10, 20, 30 years. Right. So the area is like, like what the fuck is this, right? Is this Bigfoot? Is this aliens? Is it a ghost, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, it gets into like the 2000s, and by then they're like, okay, like we gotta start installing like modern security cameras. We gotta start installing tripwires, like remote alarms that'll like trigger the police station when it's tripped, right?
Right.
So I mean, eventually, like he starts getting caught on camera, and like they don't know who he is, but they're like, oh, okay, some dude in he looks like a ninja,
right? Is
like breaking into campsites, and so they kind of like figured out like, okay, there actually is a dude,
right,
is doing this, right?
It's
not Bigfoot, it's not a legend,
right?
It's like actually some dude that is doing this, right? So once they figured that out, it's kind of only a matter of time, and eventually, he just like triggered some remote alarm, and then the police just caught him, right?
Right.
And then I mean, once they caught him, and it's just like there's not much you can do, right? You just got to kind of admit to it, right?
Right.
So they sent him to jail and charged him with 30 years of breaking and entering and theft. And
did he just fess up to all of it?
Yeah, he's just like, I mean, there's not much you can do
at
that point.
No face, no case, right?
I guess,
You can get me on the one breaking and entering, but I'm not going to admit to doing it for 30 years or whatever.
I guess he probably could have tried to defend it, but I think he was just like, he kind of sensed it was just like over. And
well, if you think about it, being in jail is not too different from...
Nah, it sounded bad, man. Like I think there's still, I don't know if they might have put out in the book of interviews with him, but he said that like, because again, they were interviewing him during the first year he was in jail, And he's just like, yeah, like, nah, it's just nervous breakdown territory, like being around other humans, having to talk. Because remember, he didn't talk to anyone for like 20 years, right?
Yeah.
He's like having to talk, having to be around other humans. He's like, yeah, I'm in hell, right? Like, this is a nightmare. And
who was he in high school? Did they have much of an account of that? Was he like a loner?
I don't know. I'd have to read the book to see, but yeah. So it's kind of a fascinating case, right? Where he's just surviving, kind of like guerrilla style, kind of like the Japanese dude in the in the jungle there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like I always pictured that if you're like surviving out on your own like that, you won't have much time to do much of anything, because I figured like all your energy would basically be invested in like surviving or preparing for survival.
Yeah, you would think so, man. But it again, like with this hermit, like it sounds like it was very like, you know, seasons, like all of the labor was sort of concentrated into like winter prep and then winter survival. But he was like, other than that, like, especially when he's younger and he was like in good shape and stuff, right? He was like, yeah, like the good part of the year, like spring, summer, he was just like, yeah, I was totally free. And
what was he eating? So he wasn't cooking, right?
No, he wasn't really cooking.
It was all like prepared stuff already.
He said his diet was like just
Nutrigrain bars.
Yeah, he was like it was monstrous. You know, it was just like you know, pork sausages and you know, garbage and sugar. You know, and just I mean, it sounded like the most unhealthy, awful stuff you could imagine. But apparently, he's like, I just need calories, right? It's not like he's like, I'm literally trying to just bulk up to, you know, insane blubber tier just to like have like a heat surplus or something, right? Because it's gonna, you know, be necessary in winter. And so
I mean, the spring summer lifestyle sounds great, but I mean, the rest sounds pretty exhausting, right?
Yeah, but I guess like you're not really like you're literally just, your goal is just like remain alive. So sorta, but I mean, you still got to be doing that breaking and entering. Like, you know, he said he did like 40 robberies a year or something. So still quite a lot.
It's pretty prolific.
It's pretty prolific, man. Yeah.
40 a year.
Or something. It was some number like that. It was still like pretty consistent.
Anything more than, I don't know, 2 a year is like pretty intense. Right?
Seems like a lot of intense work, right? But I guess like he knew, like, you know, like he had some sense of like when the off season was. Right. So he's like, you know, if you break into a campsite when no one's there, like, you know, you can probably loot it pretty.
Right.
And apparently, like, after a while, like, people did start, like, just leaving shit out for him. They're like, please don't break into our property. Like, here's, like, a bag of meat or something. You know, they would literally just, like, some people would just leave him.
Would he respect that? Or would he take the meat and break in as well? And
I think he would just take it from well, because like he wouldn't take like valuables. He would just take like food and shelter, kind of, you know, like
nothing that didn't have utility.
Nothing that didn't have immediate utility, right? So he's not gonna like steal your, you know, money or personal belongings. It's just like your refrigerator and stuff like that. Yeah. So kind of crazy, amazing story.
It's pretty wild. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I've really seen similar to that was, I don't know if there's even a story of this, but I remember stumbling on YouTube on, it's like drone footage on like a remote California coastline, I think. And they're basically doing, you know, the drone is basically just kind of circling this kind of shanty hermit.
Where was this?
Hideaway. I don't know, just... I think it was like a remote California.
Oh, California. Okay.
Or Pacific Northwest coast somewhere. Basically, it's like, you know, off the edge of a cliff, right? So like there's a cliff above you, and then this is kind of like almost just above sea level.
Yeah.
Someone built like a, you know, pretty sketchy looking kind of multi-level shanty looking thing.
Okay, yeah.
With, I don't know, there's some random stuff. There's like a punching bag hanging in one place, and I don't know, look kind of bedroom, you know, garbage kind of strewn about as well, not particularly tidy. But yeah, I mean, just how exposed to the elements it was seemed not that appealing, I guess. Like if you're, you know, if whenever there's a storm and you're getting like battered by, you know, like 10-foot waves or 20-foot waves, or I don't know, however many feet waves are, it's like can't be worth it, right?
That's what I was.
You've got to really not like society to.
That's what I was wondering about the Maine Hermit too. I was like, yeah, in theory this sounds epic, but I'm like, in practice, like, how is he? You know, like it's like rainstorms in winter and like just.
Well, just the fact that you have to like spend all night moving around to stay warm. I mean, Maine, Maine is like even more northern than where I grew up. So, what it must have gotten like minus 30 Celsius,
snow and 40 even. Snow and like just.
But like decent survival equipment, really. I mean, I guess not. I know like Zippo lighters have like a hand warmer attachment where you can technically like light it and hold it basically. So I'm surprised that he couldn't do something similar with propane.
Oh, wait, I think he did, man. But like,
in addition to that, I guess he
like,
still had to like.
The only thing I think the only thing he didn't do was like again light a fire. But he was definitely using the propane heaters and like other stuff like that.
Yeah,
is like basically anything you could use or find that like
warm.
wouldn't send up smoke. So yeah, I think he did have like propane kind of heaters and stuff. But so the other thing is like when they finally did catch him, they're like, all right, well, like this is a crazy story and we like sort of don't even believe you. So like, can you take us to your home base? Because like we kind of don't even believe you did this, right?
Right.
So he takes them to the home base and they're like, oh, wow, yeah, this is like way hard to find. Like it's like way out in the woods and like down this little valley. And like it's just like an area that like he picked it so perfectly that just like by chance, like no one would.
Right.
Again, no one did stumble across it in like 30 years almost, right? Which is kind of
not much hunting in Maine.
I don't know, man. I mean, I guess
was he on private land or was he on like?
I'd have to check that too. But
in any case, no one.
Yeah, like in 30 years, no, like which again is kind of crazy, right? You're like, wild. Really, right? Like, but like when they finally got up close and personal, they're like, holy shit, this is like 30 years of garbage, right? So like it kind of like he kind of like turned it into a. Just from necessity, it was like a garbage dump, right? Because like all this shit he stole, like where's he gonna put the trash, right? So he just like would like pack it under the, you know, like build it in layers, right? So it like sort of was almost like a insane garbage landfill that he created, right?
Modern art of some kind.
Yeah. Well, because it's just like, you know, there's no way you can put any of that stuff, right? And he's, you know, all the food wrappers and old propane tanks and like, I mean, it's like 30 years, right? So he basically sort of destroyed this land in a way because he just like turned it into a private.
Was it like strewn about or was it kind of contained?
I think he tried to organize it, but it was still so much that like
can't help but overflow. I guess
kind of created a personal landfill, right? It's kind of crazy. So I think they charged him with something like that, like literally kind of like
littering.
Destroying the environment or something because there's just so much trash there that they had to eventually kind of deal with. Get rid of. I
mean, it's not quite the romantic living off the land.
Well, that's why I think that's the only. A lot of people were like kind of ambivalent about supporting him because they're like, he like wasn't really.
Well, why would you support him to begin with, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like he made that choice. He wanted that life. But I mean, is there anything particularly admirable? Like, not.
Well, I mean, it's certainly like, I think in terms of just like a human feat of.
It's interesting. Yeah.
It's certainly an extreme feat that like seems very few people would ever be able to do. Right. And again, like he didn't technically, other than causing distress through breaking into properties, like he didn't technically like harm anyone or hurt anyone, I guess, but it's still sort of, you know, criminal, I guess, behavior. It certainly was technically criminal activity sustained for a very long time. And yeah, he wasn't like living off the land in the sense that like everything he was eating was, you know, basically prepared processed food and you know, junk and like just stuff that he stole and was able to eat. But so yeah, a lot of people were like, should we be supporting this dude? Because like a lot of people could kind of sympathize with him, but then they're like, well, the way he actually did it in practice was maybe, you know, and he kind of admitted it too. He's like, yeah, I felt awful. Like every break-in, like I felt awful. And like, I wish I didn't have to do that. And, you know, it's just, but he still kept doing it. So,
I mean, like brownie points, I guess, for expressing regrets, but I mean, that's an interesting case study for sure. I mean, like,
but like it definitely felt like once he got caught, like his life is kind of over, man, because like what like how would you ever adjust to society? Like, and it sounded like he was just so traumatized by being back in society that you know, I don't know, other than moving back in with his remaining family, like what could you really do, right?
I mean, crazy to be driven to that level of hermetitude.
Hermitry, maybe.
Hermitry, I don't know.
Hermeticism.
But that isn't that something else?
That's something else. But hermeticism, but plus it's like you think, wow, like he already thought the early 80s were that bad that he wanted to, like, I mean, but certainly now, man, like you compare society now to like, you know,
well, now you can't like do that basically, right? So I guess he kind of hit the perfect time to do that, right? Because you have like modern equipment, but not modern surveillance, I guess, right?
So I think it was sort of the perfect timing, or maybe maybe even 10 years earlier would have been even better or something.
I wonder what the Japanese guys' camp looked like. Probably not filled with.
Well, yeah, I think he was much close. I think the Japanese guy was much closer to like farmland and stuff. So like the other thing too is like Philippines is nice weather, right? So you're not having to worry about like winter surviving, you know, freezing snow or like you know, winter storms or anything, right? So so I think he was in a much more, like he could easily steal animals and vegetables and like, you know, maybe he was even growing his own crops. I have no idea how in practice, I have no idea how he actually survived, but I'm sure he was able to have much more flexible shelters and like mobile, you know, hammock kind of stuff. And like, you know, cause jungle in the Philippines, I mean, okay, there's maybe insects and stuff, but you're not going to like freeze to death from snow or anything like in Maine. So I think he was probably benefiting from the climate for one thing. And plus, it was a super rural island too. So, you know, stealing livestock and food and stuff, I mean, that's about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to try and hack it solo like that, I'd try a different approach.
Would you like?
Well, I mean, I picture more solar panels being used first of all.
Yes, man. Yeah.
You know, got to run the podcasting equipment off something, right? Can't. Yeah, I mean, but it's like Like I get the appeal of you know, swimming in the lake and looking at the stars and reading and doing whatever, but like, yeah, I guess I don't know. It just sounds like, you know, 30 years of summer camp or something.
Yeah,
which
I don't really get it either, man. I think that's why people are interested in this story, because they're like, what was his motivation? Like, what could possibly motivate someone to not talk to someone for like 30 years?
Yeah.
Like, most people, I mean, it seems extreme even by any standards, right?
Are there like interviews with him and stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean,
does he talk normal, or does he seem really strange?
I don't even know, man. I haven't. I've just read interviews with him, but I haven't like watched any. Or I think they did do like a book length. I think some book is or will be coming out about him. But I think he did say something like that. He was like, true hermits don't explain why they do it. They're just, you know.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, like we've talked about this in various forms, but yeah, like what drives you to live in Japan or in Tokyo and something so foreign, but
it's probably hard to
kind of next level.
Yeah, it probably was hard for him to like clearly explain it. But he did some of his answers in the interviews were pretty interesting, because like they sort of did sound like kind of like Zen answers, you know, where he was just like,
well, yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Well, you know, yeah, so he was just like, you know, it'd be summertime in like, I don't know, 1992, and I was just like floating on my back in the lake, and you know, there's no one around for hundreds of miles, and you know, it turns into nighttime, and I'm just looking up at the moon, and I just like vanish from existence. You know, I forget that I'm anyone, and I just become no one, and I have no name or mind or anything. I just exist, and you know, so he's giving kind of like quite Zen statements to a lot of them, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. That's great. But I mean, it's like like, you know, this is kind of like ego death type experiences, right? And it's refreshing to have those experiences, but to stay in it forever is kind of strange, I guess. Like,
I mean, I guess he just saw it as like the ultimate freedom, I guess.
Yeah.
And again, to me, it doesn't. I mean, having to like commit 40 robberies,
right,
a year or whatever, and survive winter, I mean, it doesn't seem like necessarily that much freedom, but I guess it's just the way he saw it, and maybe it made sense.
Maybe those moments
just like
were worth it. I guess.
I guess those moments were just worth it.
Yeah, it's just kind of like build an entire year around, you know, a few weeks basically, where
it'd probably be a few months, honestly.
I guess. Yeah,
you probably like once it got warmer in summertime. I mean, it's probably quite nice up there. Providing you were, you know, stockpiled. And
did he talk about having any medical emergencies? Because that's the other thing.
So I think he was like, by the time they caught him, I think he was starting to sort of feel the effects of age and like
having a terrible diet.
So having a terrible diet, and like also like he needed glasses, and like he still had the same pair of glasses from like 1982.
I'm surprised they didn't break or something.
Well, they did. And he just like meticulously like you know, fixed and taped and like reassembled them.
Yeah,
probably like hundreds of times, right? So he's wearing these like alien glasses that he's just had for like 30 years, right?
Right.
But he said that like, yeah, his eyesight had gotten much worse, so he was like sort of not really blind, but like he was definitely in a limited vision world due to needing stronger glasses that he just couldn't get anywhere, right? So and I mean, I'm sure his health, I'm sure he did probably kind of fuck his health in a lot of ways, just from crashing the insulin and nearly freezing to death, and I don't know. Yeah, it certainly probably wasn't. Well, you can see what he looks like. I mean, he doesn't look super.
Well, how old
I think
he
was
there?
I think he was only like, I don't know, early 50s or something. But he looks 32. Like he definitely sort of looked not young for his age, I guess. I mean,
not young for his age, but also not terrible, right?
I mean, I guess, yeah.
Like, you know, if a guy looked like that, you could just say it's genetics.
You could,
right?
you could.
Like,
yeah, he didn't look terrible, but
there's no obvious like you know, destruction of the body, basically.
True,
right?
But you kind of wonder what it was doing to his health, or
well, certainly his insides. Right?
Yeah, certainly his insides, and
like I can't imagine maintaining that diet. Like, how does it just not make you sick? Right?
It sounded so gross, man. Like he talks about it in the interview, and it was just like it sounded like beyond gross, and like he said that like his favorite. Again, I guess just for like the heat purposes, he was like, alcohol made me feel warmer. So I would just keep drinking it. And he was like, oh, my favorite stuff was like the real like sugary alcohol, you know, like strawberry syrup schnapps or something.
Man, you know? that stuff you like have one fun night with and then
swear it off, right? He's like, that was my favorite, was just like sugary alcohol. That I would just like chug the whole bottle and like, you know, eating, I don't know, pork sausages from the camper and like, just like, you know, marshmallow cream. He was just like eating the whole, he's just like, it was beyond awful.
Yeah. I mean, this just strikes me as like some like Home Alone cutscene, or not cutscene. That's what like montage.
That's what it seems like, man. Right? It seems like the Home Alone. I'll see if I can find the actual diet.
I mean, yeah, it's literally, you know, school's out and it's summer and it's gonna last forever, and you know we're never gonna, you know, have to go back to school or anything, right?
I'm trying to find the exact. Yeah, it says. I'll see if I can find it here.
Don't worry too much if it's hard to dig up here. Probably time we
cracking on here in time. Yeah, I think we might have to call this one.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
that took a different turn than I was expecting, but I think that was interesting.
We can just continue on maybe and do another one.
Yeah, I could do another one. Yeah, I had some stuff I wanted to get into.
I wanted to get into that stuff too. So we might just maybe do another one.
Do another one.
Get into it.
I also I'm gonna learn to drive finally. I think I mentioned this to you earlier. So I'm gonna be away for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
So it might be better to get one in the can. And
then, I mean, ideally, if we can do a few to last January, basically, if we can get through January.
Okay, yeah,
that's good.
We'll definitely do another one now and maybe put another week in the can and see how it goes.
See how it goes. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Justin Isis 93 on Instagram and Justin Isis 1 on X.
And DBLV on Instagram. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. You know, let's do our best this year.
Let's do our best.
Yeah, catch you later.
Take care.